Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for coming. It's very nice to see so many of you. I rejoice. I think that it comes, having students is so inspiring for me. It helps me engage. So we make this whole thing a dependent arising. So it's really wonderful that you're here and doing something with your life. It's so amazing, working on your heart. I think for a long time I thought, oh, we're so naturally loving and kind. Why do we need to meditate about it? Why do we need to learn about it? Why do we spend time doing that? And yet here we are. So thank you. Thank you very much for coming. So my name is Venerable Drolma. I'm the resident teacher here at Tushita, which means that I live here and I teach here even when we don't have students in person. And then we also, so let's see, I've been a nun now for 15 years. Sorry, shorter than that, 11 years. And yeah, I studied at Maitripa College, which is an amazing place in Portland, Oregon. Studied Buddhism. Before that, I studied psychotherapy. So I worked in the mental health field for a lot of years. And I find that the two of them, Buddhism and mental health, Western psychology, come together really nicely, especially these days. And then in the background and also during the meditation, we have Felipe. So Felipe is on the other end. If you want to show yourself, Felipe, and introduce yourself.
Yes, but I want to show myself.
There he is.
There I am. Hello, everyone. I'm Felipe. I'm going to be helping out Venerable Drolma during the session with the back end of Zoom, hosting the meeting, and so taking your questions and whatnot, and also leading the meditations at the end. So I hope to be of assistance, and I hope that you have a really, really nice course. And thank you so much, Venerable, for agreeing to teach yet another one. I'm very, very excited, looking forward for this. So, yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Felipe. So let's talk about how we're going to do this. We're going to do, first, we're going to start off as usual with a motivation and a meditation. And our meditation, I'm going to teach it a little bit before we start today. And it comes actually from Pema Chodron. It's a technique that she demonstrated in a teaching that was made into an audiobook, so you can listen to it. It's called Awakening Love. And the link is in the resource page, and I'll talk about that. But so that's what we'll do for like the first 15 minutes. And it'll be just about getting in touch with our own feelings of love and compassion and joy, and then how to enhance them, how to spread them, how to expand them. And then I'll teach for about a half hour or so, maybe 35 minutes of giving you some, information, things to meditate on, techniques, some of the Buddhist wisdom about loving kindness, bodhicitta. Then we'll do a discussion. So 10 minutes we'll break out into discussion groups of maybe 5 people or so, depending on how many we have. And I'll give you a question, a specific question to talk about with each other, because I think it's really helpful, especially when we're talking about interconnectedness and relating to other people, if we do spend a little bit of time in this class talking to each other, because I think that's really helpful. That's what it's all about, is relationships when we're talking about deepening a caring heart. And then we'll do another 20 minutes of meditation. So then Felipe will lead you in some of the techniques that I'll be teaching. So the resource page, I'm assuming that when you registered, you received a link to the resource page. Is that correct, Felipe?
I think Antonin sent with the email of the registration, the resource page, yes.
Okay. So the resource page is a Google Drive folder, and it has a resource page in it, which with books and video links and articles, things like that. And then also I put in there a copy of my PowerPoint in the form of handouts. So if you're interested you can, there it is. No. So if you're interested, you can download that and have that in front of you. You can follow along in the teaching, but it will most likely change at least a little bit. So I refine it as I go along in the course. But that's a resource for you if you want to have the PowerPoints in front of you, the slides that I show. Let's see. So a few technical stuff, especially, I know many of you have done this with me before, and so you're really used to it. But for those newer people, I want to give a little about the technical stuff with Zoom. One thing is that the chat is shut down, and so all your chats, if you write in chat, goes to Felipe, not to me. And I can't read it anyway. I can't multitask in that way, watching and reading and teaching at the same time. So you know, if you are having technical difficulties and you need help, you please feel free to chat to Felipe, to ask him. And then also we are, you know, internet is a fairly new technology, and we are in the foothills of the Himalayas, although India has been incredibly amazing with their internet service. Very, very rarely do we have to cancel a class. But if we do get kicked out of a meeting, like if I all of a sudden freeze and stop talking, please wait 15 minutes, and I'll keep trying for at least 15 minutes to reconnect and start the meeting again. So that's our window, is to give us 15 minutes to restart. And if we can't start within 15 minutes, then we'll try again the next day. And we'll make up the time. We've been doing that. Okay. If you don't want to participate in the discussion aspect of the class, then please leave the meeting before the discussion starts, so that there's no one put in a group all by themselves. So it's just, I hope that you do participate in the discussion. I feel like it's very, very beneficial. And people really, even if they're a little hesitant at first, when they get into it, they really like it. They really like it a lot. So, but if you aren't going to do it, leave the meeting. And then of course you can come back for the meditation and the question and answer. So just leave the meeting for 10 minutes and then come back afterwards. And then at the question and answer time, if you can either write your questions in the chat or raise your hand virtually, there's a little thing in my screen, it's under the chat window. But for some, it might be under the participants window, but there's the little blue hand that says raise your hand. And then Felipe will monitor that, and he'll tell you, you know, please ask your question now and unmute you and that sort of thing. Okay, so that's the technical stuff. Anything I forgot, Felipe?
I think that covers everything very well. And by the way, I got confirmation from Antonino, from some people in the chat, that they did receive the resource link.
Okay, great. So you did receive the resource page. Good. Thank you, Antonin. Okay, so let's get started. Let's talk a little bit about this meditation that we're going to be doing at the beginning of each class. And some of you may know it already if you have studied within the Theravada tradition, so the Thai forest tradition, or Goenkaji's schools from Burma, or Insight Meditation Society, like Joseph Goldstein, Sharon Salzberg, those people. It's known as metta in that tradition. Within Buddhism, we often talk about the four immeasurables, and we'll go into that more specifically in a day or two. But from Pema Chodron's point of view, it's working with these four immeasurables, and she calls it scene meditation. So let's take a look at that slide. So scene meditation, C-E-E-N, is about developing this subjective experience of love. And so, like, one of my premises of this course was that we all have a basically loving, kind, compassionate heart, that we are, His Holiness talks about the fact that we all come from that, that we would not be here, we would not survive as human beings if we didn't have someone who was being loving and kind toward us. So he demonstrates that as being a very basic sort of connection to us being human and being alive. So we all have it. Mingyur Rinpoche talks about our basic goodness, and we'll talk a little bit more about this, but for him, this is our being. You know, all of us at our most basic level, our love, our compassion. And so within this course, what I'd like to do is contact that experience that we have all felt, or someone has shown to us, and then we're going to encourage the experience with words. So usually we say something like, may you be well and happy. May you have everything you need. May you have lasting joy. You know, like these kinds of things, as far as a way to start to grow that feeling that we've contacted. So within the contact phase, we have to get in touch with, it's an emotional feeling. So our feelings are both thoughts, but they're also physiological. So this concept of a warm heart, when you feel love for another being, be it an animal or a human being or ourselves, that there is a sense within our bodies that feels this. And so it's important that we get in touch with what that experience is. What does it feel like? Sometimes being in love is like the most powerful feeling of love that we can have, especially at the very beginning when we're first getting to know the person and that feeling is starting to grow. So all of us can contact that experience. And so what we're doing in meditation is we're consciously bringing it to mind. So we're generating it in our hearts, where we notice it, we recognize it, and then we encourage it. And naturally, with the encouragement, with the words, it starts to expand. So we start to be filled with it. Our minds start to be filled more and more with it. It grows. And it's sort of, it's because you can't have like harmful, negative, cruel, selfish kinds of feelings while we're feeling this love, this compassion, this warmth for others. The generating these feelings actually pushes that out. It starts to make less room for the negativity. So when we expand, we actually fill the mind and fill our lives with this feeling. And because it's our basic nature, because it's in line with our connection to others, which is how we actually exist, this whole idea of connectedness, it actually automatically brings joy as well. So like when you're really, really in love, you feel an incredible euphoria. You feel just blissed out. And this is true too when you start expanding this love and compassion for others. And then within this meditation, it's important that we notice the effects. So when we do the different, so we'll practice doing different people and different groups of people, and ourselves, and at some point we have to sort of become aware of where our boundaries are. So all of us have boundaries as far as expanding, unless we're already Buddhists. So Buddhists have infinite love, infinite compassion, and we have this capacity too. But because of our ignorance, because of our ordinary state, we have boundaries. It stops at some point. And so it's interesting when we're doing this meditation to notice those boundaries, to notice where our edges are as far as that expansion. Where does it sort of come up? Like, where does thoughts start coming up of like, well, really? Like doubts sometimes come in, or remembering things that you don't like about the person, or that feels difficult, or even just this impulse. Sometimes we really have this impulse to that stops us. For maybe it's not in consciousness. Maybe we don't have the thoughts, where we're aware of how that that love is stopping or why that love is stopping, but we just kind of notice a hesitancy or a pulling back. And so what we're going to do with that noticing part is that we're going to simply be with it. So we're not going to judge, we're not going to push, we're not going to force, okay? When we notice those edges, we're just going to watch them. We're just going to see them. And it's called being with it with compassionate presence. So it's an understanding that we're ordinary beings, that, you know, we're human, just like all other human beings. We have limits, and just watching those edges and with kindness, with presence, becoming aware of them. So this is the process that we're going to do, contacting the feeling, and you can use whoever you'd like, whoever you already have a memory or already right now feel a sense of warmth and kindness toward. And then we're going to encourage that for that same being that you have this for. And then we're going to expand it. We're going to feel that expansion, notice that. And then we're going to notice the edges when there's sort of a stopping. And of course, it's not going to be a very clear line. It never is with mental phenomena. It's more of things you just start noticing, and then maybe when you notice it'll go away and you'll expand more, or you'll get back in touch with where you were for a little bit, and then maybe you'll hit your edges again. So just it's definitely a process. It's a mental process, and it's, if you haven't watched your feelings of love expand, you may not be familiar with what it's like. So part of the meditation is just watching, you know, this whole process, and of course always this awareness of our feelings of love, of our compassion, of what is happening in our mind when we're working with these feelings. So okay, go ahead, let's stop this share. Set up your posture. And if you aren't familiar with meditation, so you don't really have a posture yet, just get comfortable. The main thing about your posture is that you have a straight back. And you can close your eyes, or if you're used to meditating with them open, you can have them slightly open. And then relax. Just releasing any tension and starting to turn inward, to remove your senses from the external world and start to become aware of that internal experience that each one of us has. And then we'll set a motivation, thinking that each one of us is engaging in this class and what our reasons are. What brought you here? Most likely it has something to do with creating more peace, more well-being, more love, more happiness in your own mind. And then allowing that to spread to the rest of the world, doing it for others as well. In a very simple way. I just want to love more. I just want to be kinder. This world needs a lot of that. Let me be the one who brings that to the world. And because of our interconnectedness, we have effects. The mind is powerful. And let this be our motivation. And then I'd like you to choose someone or a pet or, yes, anyone, can be yourself, whom you already have a feeling of loving kindness toward. And it can be simply love. It doesn't have to be loving kindness. Usually they're included in each other. But someone who you have that feeling of warmth toward, who your heart opens to. Maybe they've shown you love in the past, or you just have had familiarity with them. They're your friend or your family member, maybe a sibling or a parent or a child. May you be well. May things go well for you. May you have joy. And feel that sense of caring expand. Start to fill you for this person. That wish for them to have it all. And then start to notice. Notice those feelings. Notice what's happening in you. Notice the expansion. Notice the warmth. Where do you feel that in your body? All over? A specific place? And be present with that. With that open heart. Notice if you feel more relaxed or more joyful, or if you feel some resistance. And stay with that feeling. And if you want to, you can come back to remembering the person, saying some encouraging words, and watch it expand. I love you and I want you to be happy. I care about you deeply. May you always be well and may things go easily for you. Again, we aren't forcing anything. We're just noticing and allowing it to expand. Okay, and then coming out of the meditation, gently. Okay, so now what I want to do is skip all the way to the highest aspiration. So we started from the ground, from our basis, from this loving kindness that we already have, those feelings of warmth that are just budding for most of us in our hearts. And now I'm going to skip all the way up to this concept of bodhicitta. So what a bodhisattva is feeling, experiencing, and developing. So if you're not familiar with this, I know many of you have some experience, but many of you are also beginners. That this concept of bodhicitta, that's what we're going to talk about. So it's an aspiration, it's a wish. And a bodhisattva is a being who has this wish, this strong aspiration, this strong wish called bodhicitta. Okay, so bodhicitta has a lot of aspects to it. So what I'd like you to do now, so those of you who are familiar with bodhicitta, in the chat, so Felipe, I think you'll need to open the chat to everybody. If you can just put for yourself a few words in the chat of what bodhicitta, what aspects of bodhicitta, or what bodhicitta means to you. Okay, so some words of bodhicitta. Well, for those of you who have studied it or learned about it. So if you want to type that in your chat to everyone, not just to register to Chishita. Let's see what that looks like. Ah, yes, in service to others, in service of others. Generosity. Wish to reach the awakened mind in order to benefit everyone. Compassion, compassion for all sentient beings. Love all. Boundless compassion. Acceptance, allowing. All-encompassing kindness and altruism. Compassion. 100% happiness. Very nice. Love, compassion, wisdom. Infinite kindness. Compassion. Love, compassion to others. Kindness. Recognizing the potential in others. Very good. Surrender completely. Sacrifice for the well-beings of all. Yes. Very nice. Very nice. To be able to make someone smile. Wish for liberation. For all sentient beings to be liberated. Impermanence. Okay. So I had one teacher who was very interested in all these aspects of bodhicitta. We can talk about this bodhicitta in a very technical way, and I'll do that in just a second as far as the technical definition of it. But at the same time, it has all these aspects, like you have outlined in the chat, of this warm heart. You know, like we've already been starting, this is the basis, and everybody has it. And then we start to expand. We recognize that all beings have this potential for wholeness. One, all beings have this potential to love, to feel compassion for others, to connect with others in this very beneficial, helpful way. And at the same time, their potential has this capacity to grow and remove all the suffering and remove all the negativity. Both ourselves and others have this potential to become fully whole beings in terms of developing all these aspects of ourselves, our wisdom, our kindness, our strength, our courage. That everyone has. This is, you know, this Buddha nature, Buddha potential that we talk about, that every being has this potential. And then it also includes this wish for others to have ultimate satisfaction. So of course we want ourselves to have this ultimate satisfaction. We don't want to deal with problems or pain or any of those things that we have in our life. Much of our life is spent trying to get away from that. And so it becomes not only wishing ourselves to have this, but also wishing others to have. And it isn't just temporary, you know, just, oh, have a nice meal, or, you know, enjoy a movie, or, you know, enjoy a relationship. It's throughout their whole lives and their whole minds to have this, what we call ultimate satisfaction, and that it be lasting, not just for this life, and not just for an hour or a year, but lasting happiness, ultimate satisfaction. And then it includes also this commitment to develop ourselves for others. Because in order for us to fulfill this wish that we want others to have this ultimate satisfaction, we have to develop ourselves. we have to be working on ourselves, because if we don't know how to do it, if we don't know how to develop our own potential, then we can't help others in any way. We can't benefit them because we don't know how to do it, right? How can we help them do it? So much of the basis of this is also this understanding that happiness is not something that comes from external circumstances, that ultimately, or from the source, everyone's happiness is something that is generated within their mind. So it's a perspective, an attitude that people develop that makes them happy. It's not based on what their external circumstances are. Because if it were based on external circumstances, then all the people who had all the comfort in the world, what they call the 1%, all the people with all the wealth, then they would be the happiest people in the world. But studies show that actually the more affluent the country, the more the higher suicide rate there is. And there's also the study that was done about happiness of lottery winners, that lottery winners increase their happiness for maybe 2 years, and then they go right back to what they were before. It isn't based on our external circumstances. The other thing is that people who, if it were not based in the mind, this experience of happiness, people who had really horrible situations, who were, very sick all the time, or who lived in a lot of poverty, then they would never be happy. And that is just not true. We've done, you see people can be very happy without a lot. And maybe there were times in your life when you were struggling, or when things were very difficult, but because of your attitude, because of your connection to others, or your determination, or something like that, that was what made the love come, what made the joy come, what made the happiness come. It wasn't based on those external circumstances. So bodhicitta is this recognition that it comes from our minds, and then we develop it. As we develop it in our minds, we become more accessible to others. We become more able to focus on benefiting others, and we know how to bring that joy to ourselves so we can help others find their own joy, be that catalyst for them to develop it in their own minds. Okay, so technical definition of bodhicitta from a Buddhist Mahayana perspective: the wish that all beings become enlightened, and the wish that I become enlightened for them. So we're, again, like I said, we're going from this very simple, I love you, I want you to be happy, to this fullest expression of our love, this deepest, this understanding that enlightenment is the complete satisfaction, the removal of all suffering, that an enlightened being, because they have removed all the difficulties from their minds, they have no more anger, they have no more self-pity, they have no more confusion, they have no more of the ignorance. Because they've removed that from their mind, they have ultimate happiness. They do not suffer anymore. And sometimes questions come about compassion, and we'll talk about this, because compassion is about recognizing the suffering in others. And although enlightened beings have compassion for others, they don't suffer as a result of it. And there's a really good article on the resource page that talks about a study that was done with Matthew Ricard, who is a very famous, for some people, he's a monk in the Tibetan tradition who's from France. And he was studied in science. So they put him in these fMRI machines, so functional magnetic resonance imaging machine, which can look at the different blood flow to the brain. And when he was meditating on compassion, he actually, the same parts of his brain would be activated as those for happiness and those for joy, because his development of compassion was not focused on the pain of the suffering. It's focused on the caring and the love and the joy that comes from caring and love. Although he was recognizing the suffering and the fact that beings do suffer, he was not having the same suffering response as someone who is only in the suffering and doesn't have the caring aspect. Okay, so that's just, we'll get back into that, but just as an aside. And then the second part, the wish that I become enlightened for them. So notice it's a wish, it's an aspiration, it's something that is in the mind. Okay. Now, we could also talk technically about two different types of bodhicitta. Okay. Again, this is from Buddhist philosophy, so you're not expected to get all of it. You know, it's a very brief introduction, but I want to give you the big picture first. So we talk about conventional bodhicitta, which is on this relative level, meaning this level of you're sitting here and I'm sitting there, that there are two actual separate people who are relating in this moment. This is conventional, this is relative. So in this, we have a self that exists as well. There's a me and the you. So some of you may have heard of this concept of selflessness in bodhicitta. So when we're talking about this conventional level, we're talking about a self that exists. Okay, so there's a me and there's a you, and this is conventional level. Right now, regular, every day, there are 7.5 billion people in the world. There are a lot more sentient beings. There are insects and animals that also exist in the world, and each one of them wants to be happy, doesn't want suffering, and we develop this wish for every single one of them to have this ultimate satisfaction, this complete Buddhahood. So aspiring bodhicitta talks about having this wish in our minds, and it's the first step, because of course you have to have the view in your mind that you want all these beings to be enlightened, you want them to be happy fully, and then the second aspect becomes, how am I going to do that? What are the actions that I'm going to take? And that's engaging bodhicitta. Now, on the ultimate level, we can also talk about something called ultimate bodhicitta, and this is the wisdom aspect of Buddhism. And I'm not going to go into this too much within this course, but this is very much a part of this development of this wish, is this ultimate view, which is the view of emptiness or selflessness. So in this view, we start to break down some of the boundaries between ourselves and others. So on a conventional level, we have two separate people. On an ultimate level, we are intimately connected. But we have this balance, of course. We exist separately, but we also exist within this connection, within this level where we all are what we call dependent arisings. And I'll explain that a little more later. And so when we're developing this ultimate bodhicitta, first we have a conceptual understanding of it, and then we get to a direct experience of it. Okay, so this is the wisdom aspect of this bodhicitta, of this wish to become enlightened. And this is also important in the development of our bodhicitta, is that we have a realistic view of how we actually exist. We can't walk around with a lot of ignorance thinking, having perceptions of things that are not necessarily true based on, what we call delusions. If we have a deluded attitude of the world, of other beings, of ourselves, then our ability to actualize this bodhicitta motivation to actually become enlightened in order to benefit all beings will be stopped, because it'll be based on an incorrect view of how actually things exist. So we always have to have this wisdom aspect. We don't want to just dump the wisdom aspect, not use our minds, not use our intelligence, not use our discrimination, and just love, indiscriminately. We know that's not helpful. That's, what we call I think there's idiot compassion. Idiot compassion is like you do everything for everyone, no matter what. You're everybody's doormat, and that doesn't really make a lot of sense. So always within bodhicitta, we want this ultimate as well as this wisdom as well as this conventional aspect. Okay. So always starting with ourselves. One thing that we've found is that as we're developing compassion, especially for us modern people, there seems to be this I think it's a symptom of our degenerate age, this way in which the world is becoming more and more difficult to practice love and morality and spiritual ethics, this decline that seems to be happening in the minds of being as the teachings of the Buddha disappear, as maybe some of our religious systems become more corrupt and less trustworthy, that there seems to be this decline in this ability to connect and love others. That one of the aspects of it is that our love of ourselves even goes down. There's this phenomena of self-hatred, of lack of self-worth, of a belief that we are unlovable at a basic level, that somehow we're bad or unworthy. And many modern people have experienced this. And this wasn't necessarily present in more traditional societies where there was more of a sense of community, of connection to others. I think it may be more based on this disconnection that we have, this sense of being independent and competitive that is happening a lot in the world, in modern societies. And so there's a need for us to first have a relationship to ourselves. Again, this is a conventional self of compassion, of caring, of understanding. And so there's a researcher who started to look at this concept of self-compassion. How do I treat myself when I'm going through a difficult time? And sometimes we have to really start there. Instead of looking outward to others, to always being compassionate to others and thinking that we aren't worthy or we aren't lovable in some way. So sometimes we're very much socialized to view the world in this way, to treat others with more love, more compassion, more respect, more care than we do ourselves. Sometimes it's very much in our families, if we or in our families where we were punished for being selfish, or when we were really rewarded for taking care of others, not taking care of ourselves. Sometimes this pattern develops where we love others more than ourselves, but as a result, we create a lot of suffering for ourselves, which weakens our ability to actually love others, to actually be compassionate toward others. And so we see this very commonly in altruistic professions where there's social work and psychology and the medical profession, where people give and give and give to others, thinking this is what makes them a good person, what will get them love in their lives, will bring them happiness in their lives, but they don't take care of themselves. They don't focus on their own health and their own well-being. So then they burn out. They become frustrated. They become upset. They become sick. And then they're no good to anybody. They aren't good to themselves and they aren't good to others. So this self-care, there's this concept and this phenomena in psychology that's called vicarious traumatization, which is a big word for when you spend a lot of time engaging in the suffering of others, you end up hurting yourself. And as a result of that, you become traumatized because of the giving and their caring that you're giving to people who are going through a really hard time. And so in order to deal with this vicarious traumatization, there has to be a real strong sense of self-love, of self-care, of self-compassion first, because that's like the protection. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama often says bodhisattvas need to be courageous, they need to be strong, they need to be powerful to engage in the suffering that exists in the world. So in order to do that, we have to learn how to take care of ourselves. We have to have compassion for ourselves. And then, as I had one student describe it, he says, when my cup is full, then it overflows to everyone. It goes everywhere much more easily. When I have a full cup, when I am full of love, I love all beings. And there's a power, there's a strength, and there's a protectiveness in that. So self-compassion, and we're going to do a meditation on this today with Felipe. Self-compassion is that when we suffer, caring for ourselves as we would care for someone we truly love. When we suffer, caring for ourselves as we would care for someone we truly love. So when we're vulnerable, it's not a matter of beating ourselves up or pushing ourselves harder or berating ourselves, saying what a horrible person we are because we're sick or because we're failing or because we made a mistake. It's not about that. It's actually about comfort, about caring, about encouragement. And some of the studies are starting to show that actually people who have more self-compassion are more likely to try again, to engage, to get over failure, to get over difficulty, because they have that strength, and their association with failure is not negativity. It's not self-hatred. It's actually understanding and compassion. And when we have compassion, we naturally touch into our ability to heal from our difficulties, to overcome our difficulties. So 3 aspects of self-compassion: self-kindness. So how do we talk to ourselves? What do we say in our own minds? Versus self-judgment. Am I mean to myself? Do I call myself, do I say I'm an idiot, I'm a bad person? Or do we take a tone of voice with ourselves that is punishing? Sometimes we do that. And so how are we kind to others? How do we kind to ourselves? How do we say nice things? Do you have a way in which you say to yourself where you say, it's okay, dear, I understand. You're going through a hard time. Yeah, and it sounds kind of funny, right? When you talk about your self-talk, because it's like you're not supposed to talk to yourself, right? You're crazy if you talk to yourself. But in fact, what we're saying here is that the thoughts that are coming in our minds, we want to be kind, compassionate, understanding, supportive, gentle, all these things. And this makes us stronger. This encourages us. This helps us to heal. And then the second one, common humanity versus isolation, is a recognition that we are part of the rest of the human race. We are not perfect. We are ordinary beings. And that's okay. That's even a good thing, because it makes us connected to others. And connection brings strength. When we have connection to others, when we feel this sense of, I am not alone, I am not isolated, then we have more strength. And in Buddhism, this is a powerful technique that when we are suffering, we connect to the suffering of others. So our compassion grows. So this concept of common humanity. Isolation, I think, is very much connected to self-pity, which weakens us. And then this concept of mindfulness versus over-identification is learning to be with our feelings, learning to just simply watch our feelings. Over-identification is when we become, I am my anger, I am my failure, I am my mistake, I am this bad thing that happened to me in my childhood. And we concretize, we stick, we get stuck in our trauma, we get stuck in our past mistakes. This is over-identification. Mindfulness is allowing things to change, allowing things to move, because when we're mindful of how things actually exist, of how they are, we see feelings come and go, experiences come and go. The mind is constantly changing. And this is what mindfulness brings us an awareness of, that we are not stuck in our past. We are not stuck in this belief about ourselves that we're a horrible person, because that's over-identification with one aspect of ourselves. And mindfulness recognizes, I'm a lot of things. I have made mistakes. I have been hurt by others. I have had lots of negative experiences. I have also had lots of positive experiences. My life is constantly going up and down. And if I only focus on one bad aspect of it, this is not reality. This is a concretizing. This is a reification. This is a stuckness that is not in line with how things actually exist. Okay, so being present. So self-compassion, far from being selfish, is a loving, connected presence, and it brings us strength. Okay. So now I'd like to go into the discussion part. So Felipe is going to divide you into discussion groups of, let's say, 5 people. Okay, so that's about 29 groups, I think. No, sorry. There go a few more, maybe 10 groups.
Around 10, 12 groups, yeah.
Yeah, let's do about 10 groups. And the question we're going to ask is, how do we balance self-compassion with acts of serving others? How do we balance our self-compassion with acts of serving others? So how would you do that? How would you balance that? Okay, and we'll go for 10 minutes, okay, Felipe?
Yeah, Venerable, no problem. So as Venerable Drolma mentioned before, those of you who don't want to participate in the discussion, you can leave now and then come back in 10 minutes. So I'll get the group started right now. Create rooms. Okay, there we go.
There we go.
Yep, it worked out.
Yeah.
My computer got frozen at some point, and then
Oh.
you didn't notice that it could be another session, right?
No. Can you pause the recording?
Yes.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. So we have some time for questions now. If anyone has any questions, you can raise your hand or type it in the chat, either one.
Now we already have Prashant there with his hand up.
Okay,
Prashant, please go ahead.
Prashant?
Good morning, Drolma.
Hi,
Hi, how are you?
good.
Okay, and this was something that we were discussing during the session discussion group, and there's this thought that came up that when you're trying to become compassionate, right, and you have to draw a thin line between what you can do and what you cannot do. How do you weigh the pros and cons? Let's say I am a person that is like supporting, let's say, 100 lives, right? I am someone who is running a charity, and I'm trying to. It's a non-profitable charity that I'm running, and then I see a live in a general sense. I'm, let's say, going somewhere. I see some person not being able to support, not in a healthy condition, and in supporting that one person, if I end up spending everything that I have, right, and I'm not able to support those 100 people later on, so how do you decide, how do you weigh things, right? That's what I want to understand.
Yeah. So His Holiness talks about 3 questions that we can ask ourselves when we're figuring out the best course of action. The first one is, it for myself or for others? Now, clearly in this situation, you're already talking about how it is more for others than for myself. The second one is, it for the few or for the many? So then looking at, maybe it's better use of resources to be able to benefit more people rather than just a few people, which is a hard one, right? I mean, that's a really tough one to answer. And sometimes it means denying some people in order to be able to serve more people.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, we're in a situation where there is limit. We have limit. It's not limitless. And that's an acceptance we have to come to. And then the third one is, it for now or for the future? That's the third question he talks about, is looking over short term versus long term. And from a Buddhist perspective, we often make this decision that I want to, like, there's a saying, I don't know if it's common, you may have heard of it, but and it's, anyway, do you give a man a fish or do you teach him to fish? You know, this idea of, you know, helping people to support themselves rather than just you know, because they'll eat for a day, or if you teach them to fish, they eat for a longer time. So this is the third question: is it for the short term or for the long term? And these are questions that we can use to guide our decisions.
Thank you.
Sure.
That helps.
Good.
Then we have Fernando.
Fernando?
Fernando, I'm trying to unmute you.
Okay.
There we go.
So can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, good. So it's related to the previous question, because I was discussing this with Prashant, and he was saying, well, we were discussing about when, or until what level, or until when should we be able, or should we think on benefiting others in terms of a bodhisattva path? Because even in the Jakarta tales, when they tell about the stories of Buddha Shakyamuni when he was a bodhisattva, I mean, the story of the tigress, when he gave up his own body. And then I have been told that, for example, to do that kind of acts of kindness, which are a bit extreme to a certain degree, you need to become an Arya Bodhisattva. And it's not before that, because when you become an Arya Bodhisattva, you don't feel the same as a normal sentient being, for what I have heard. Isn't it?
Yes.
So then, until we become an Arya Bodhisattva, that we will truly be able to help others, knowing how to help them, right? I was telling them that it's just until we have both the clairvoyance and telepathy, which is reached whenever you reach shamatha. But then again, to know more about the karma of sentient beings, you need to become an Arya Bodhisattva, isn't it?
Yes. It's the more wisdom you gain, the better able you're going to be to help others. Absolutely. No doubt about it. And if you, the thing about giving away your body that they talk about is that one of the most things that takes away from generosity is when you regret it afterwards. So being able to, they want you to be an Arya Bodhisattva because you won't regret it, because you are very clear that there's, you know, this sense of emptiness of the self, that there is not this sense of holding on to a concrete self. So when you have released that more, then it's easier to give of yourself because you don't have that same attachment and grasping to it. Now, for most of us, we're not there. And so we need to wait until we have less of that grasping, then we can give more. So it does mean bringing in this wisdom as far as, because the mind is so powerful, because our intention is so powerful, we want to have as clear and wise of an intention as possible in our acts of generosity. And when that intention is clear, then we give more freely, we give more purely. But that doesn't mean that you don't not give, you know, that you stay selfish all the time. And that's not what you're saying, right? You're not saying, it's what it says is be careful how much you give according to your capacity. According to your capacity.
Okay. Yes. Thank you very much. Very well.
Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you too.
Thank you, Fernanda. So we have, Venerable, we have one question in the chat saying, can you please explain your view on the question for discussion?
Oh, for balancing. I think I kind of just went into that with Fernando as far as recognizing our limits, recognizing what we are capable of giving, and then going beyond that, a slight amount, you know, going out of our comfort zone as far as what we can give. But it's definitely a process, and it's going to change just like we change. How much can I give and how much do I need to take care of myself? For example, I was not raised in very austere circumstances. Okay, I was American and, you know, middle class and all that. And so for me to just give all my possessions away and go and live in a cave makes absolutely no sense. I could not do that. But slowly, my life has become more simple. I have become more able to give more of myself slowly. So I think this balance between what I actually need to take care of my basic needs and what I can give to others, my acts of compassion, it changes and it expands as my consciousness expands of you know, my connection to others, of my wish to give, of my wish to be generous. And I just get more comfortable with less. Yeah, so I think it's it's a process, it's a moving thing. And each one of us gets to figure that out for ourselves. And that's why I brought it in as a discussion question. Okay, so let's go to meditation. Just sort of a warning for those of you who are on, I try, but I am not very good at ending on time. So almost always we will start the meditation before the end of the hour and a half, but often the meditation will go over into after the class. So I'm very sorry, you may have to listen to the meditations later if you have somewhere else you need to be. Or please, you know, just plan for 2 hours and then maybe we'll get out early. So that's the best I can do. I'm very sorry. It's my enthusiasm that just does not let me stop. Okay. All right. So enjoy your meditation.
I have to say that I, for one, love your enthusiasm, Barbara. Thank you. All right, so let's everyone get into a comfortable position. Let's go in for the meditation. And as you know already, mainly keeping your back loosely straight, trying to get that body nice and comfortable, grounded and stable. And taking a couple of minutes to prepare the body, allow the awareness to descend into the space of the body first and relax as much as you can relax, letting absolutely all the tension and tightness in your body to dissolve. Every time you breathe out, you can have a sense of release. In that way, we set the body at ease. We allow it to go back to its natural state, free of tension and tightness. Relax, still, and yet vigilant. Now just taking a minute to experience that state without much thought or rumination. Just be with your body as it is for a moment without doing. Simply be. And now gently place your attention upon the natural rising and falling of the breath. In this process, paying particular attention to the quality of the out-breath as relaxing, releasing, settling breath, enabling you to gradually settle your awareness more deeply into the body and increase this sense of spaciousness and ease. And continue relaxing in this way, paying particular attention to the felt sense of becoming more open and spacious with each breath. Let the out-breath be a quality of ease in yourself as you settle into and make friends with yourself. And then you can introduce into this quiet awareness a notion of acceptance and compassion. This can be done by simply introducing the word acceptance without disturbing the mind's quiet clarity. As if this word is a fish that swims through the water, not disturbing it. Continuing with the breath, trying to maintain the sense that whatever attributes and failings you have, this is deeply acceptable. If this enables a more soft sense of ease in the present, being present with yourself, then remain with that feeling and allow it to deepen. Acceptance is the beginning of allowing ourselves to be as we are. If any negative feelings or thoughts about yourself arise, just try to let them be without contracting into them. Instead, let the out-breath enable kind of letting go and simply continue the process of releasing and opening up with the breath, with a sense of acceptance, being with yourself as you are. And now, being present with yourself and accepting, you can gently close your eyes in order to start a visualization. So imagine yourself in a place that is safe and comfortable as possible. It might be a cozy room with a fireplace, or a peaceful beach with a warm sun and a cool breeze, or a forest glade. It could also be an imaginary place like floating on clouds, anywhere that you feel reasonably peaceful and safe. Let yourself enjoy being in that place. And soon you'll receive a visitor, a warm and compassionate presence, a compassionate friend who embodies the qualities of wisdom, strength, and unconditional love. TSP may be a spiritual figure, a wise, compassionate teacher, or a person from your past, like a grandparent. He or she may have no particular form, perhaps this being more like a light or a warm presence. And your compassionate friend cares deeply about you and would like you to be happy and free from unnecessary struggle. Allow this being to come to mind. And as this being arrives, you have the choice to go out from your safe place and meet your compassionate friend, or to invite him or her in. Placing yourself in the right way in relation to your compassionate friend, whatever feels right. Imagining your compassionate friend in as much detail as possible, especially allowing yourself to feel what it's like to be in his or her presence. There's nothing you need to do except to experience this moment. This compassionate friend is wise and all-knowing, knows exactly where you are in your life journey. Listen carefully. Your friend might want to tell you something that is just what you need to hear right now. Take a moment and listen carefully to what your compassionate friend might have to say. And if no words come out, then that's okay too. Just continue to experience the good company. That is a blessing in itself. Or perhaps you would like to say something to your compassionate friend. And simply enjoying the presence of this compassionate friend as you continue to enjoy his or her good company. Allow yourself to realize that actually your friend is a part of yourself. All the compassionate feelings, images, words of wisdom that you are experiencing, they flow from your own inner wisdom and compassion. So in a sense, being open and receptive to this, in this moment you're giving yourself these words of wisdom and these feelings of loving kindness and compassion.
So finally, when you're ready, allow the images to gradually dissolve in your mind's eye, remembering that this compassion and wisdom is always within you, especially when you need them the most. You can call on your compassionate friend at any time you wish, as he or she is really within yourself. And settling back into your body, letting yourself savor what just happened, perhaps reflecting on the words you might have heard. Gently bringing yourself to the point where you're just open. Again, letting go of the doing energy of the mind. Just be. And gently coming out of the meditation. And now we move on to the last part of the practice, which is dedicating, merit, the positive potential, the good energy that we've created with practice. And for this, we'll use a prayer from Master Shantideva, who's an 8th century Indian master. Very beautiful way to offer whatever merit we've created. So, reading from this, you're welcome to join along. May all beings everywhere, plagued by sufferings of body and mind, obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and the deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored and find in repose. May the naked find clothing, the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water or delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective and wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be free from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid and those bound be freed. May the powerless find power, and may people think of benefit in each other. For as long as space remains, for as long as sentient beings remain. Until then, may I too remain to dispel the mysteries of the world. Right.
Okay, that's it for this class. Thank you very much. I will see you tomorrow, or if you want to join again in whatever, like 10 hours or something. For our next class, it'll be a repeat of the today's, but of course never the same because I'm different all the time. All right, take care. Goodbye.